Happy Pride Month! Today we're going to be talking about trans representation, why we need it, what to avoid with it, how to do it right, and more. Any nasty comments will be deleted, unless you lot reply before I get to it with a really witty comeback. I would never delete your genius replies. But without further ado, let's get into it. Sup peoples, and welcome back to another video. Last year I did a Pride themed video and you all seemed to enjoy it, so this year we're back with not one, but 4 of them. Over the next 4 weeks, I'll be releasing 4 videos, each discussing a different part of the LGBTQIA+ community, and how to write representation for it. And this month we're kicking it off with the transgender community. You might be asking yourself, what is being trans? According to transequality.org, transgender people are people whose gender identity is different from the gender they were thought to be at birth. Trans is often used as shorthand for transgender. The site goes on to explain, when we're born, a doctor usually says that we're male or female based on what our bodies look like. Most people who were labeled male at birth turn out to actually identify as men, and most people who were labeled female at birth grow up to be women. But some people's gender identity, their innate knowledge of who they are, is different from what was initially expected when they were born. Most of these people describe themselves as transgender. A transgender woman lives as a woman today, but was thought to be a male when she was born. A transgender man lives as a man today, but was thought to be female when he was born. Some transgender people identify as neither male nor female, or as a combination of both. There are a variety of terms for that, such as non-binary or genderqueer, but we'll be talking about that in next week's video. The site continues and says that being transgender means different things to different people. There is no one way to be transgender, and no one way for transgender people to look or feel about themselves. The best way to understand what being transgender is like is to talk with transgender people and listen to their stories, which ties in quite nicely to the next bit of this video and the first thing that I want to talk about: research. But before that, a quick disclaimer, because I should say that not all of the identities that I will be talking about in these videos are ones that I personally can relate to. So if you notice me making any mistakes, please point them out in the comments. But I'm doing my best with what knowledge I do have and the research I've done and the experiences I've heard. Which brings me back to that first point: research. This is important for so many different parts of the writing process, but it's especially important if you are going to be writing about an experience, community, or identity other than your own. This is why I think that a lot of people probably find writing representation daunting. You're scared to mess up and do a bad job, and so you just don't put it in your story. But you can write about characters who have different identities than your own. You don't need to be trans to write a trans character, and you don't have to be trans to write a trans character well. It might help, but with research and care, you can do a wonderful job even if you're not a part of the LGBTQ+ community at all. Let me put it this way. If an author said that he didn't write female characters because he wasn't a woman, you would think he was being silly, right? It's the same with LGBTQIA+ characters. Because at the end of the day, they are just characters the same way that LGBTQIA+ people are just people. You might just want to look into that specific identity you'll be writing a little bit before you begin, which is precisely what this video is for. Though it is not an exhaustive list, and I do recommend doing some more research, the fact that you clicked on this is a great sign that you're going in the right direction, because it's a sign that you care and you're going to try and do a good job. So why does representation matter? Honestly, there are 1,000,001 reasons, but let's focus on 2 of the main ones. First off, normalization. Now, being LGBTQIA+ and or trans is totally normal, so don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But trans people are in the minority, and a lot of people can go their entire lives without meeting someone who identifies as transgender. According to usafacts.org, less than 1% of people in the United States identify as transgender, which seems like a really small amount of people, right? Certainly not an amount worth going after in the public media, passing laws against, or trying to get rid of, right? Right? Anyway, 0.95% is a very small sounding number. So you might ask yourself, why do they even need representation? Do I need to put in the effort to show them in my book or movie or whatever it is you're writing? Well, 0.95% of people in the United States translates to 2.3 million people. That's 2.3 million people who can go their whole lives and never once look up at their TVs and see someone like them in a movie or show. That's 2.3 million people who can go their entire lives without ever reading a book with a character, let alone a main character, who's just like them. And that's a gosh darn shame. Why does representation matter? It matters because imagine that you've never heard of a trans person in either a positive or negative way. and you see a show that has a trans character, and they are well written and respected by the writers of that show. You'll probably come away from that with a positive connection to the word trans. It matters because when a trans person gets to see themselves represented in media, when anyone gets to see themselves represented in media, it can make them feel validated and supported. It matters because there might be someone out there who doesn't yet know that they're trans, and then they could read your book and relate so much to something the character is going through that it's that moment that makes them realize something about themselves. I knew that something was up, that the way I felt about my appearance and body was different than the other people around me, but if I hadn't have found non-binary YouTubers talking about how they realized, then I never would have realized that there was a word called non-binary and that I was it. And if I had never realized that, then I would still be feeling uncomfortable in my own skin and very alone. I would still be wondering why my hair getting long made me cry, or putting on a dress makes me feel icky and uncomfortable. I would be a much less happy and fulfilled person. So that's why representation is important. It's important because it can uplift and help promote a positive image of a community, because it can help people in that community feel a greater sense of that community, and because it can help people who don't realize they're part of that community yet find it. How to and how not to write trans representation. First up, we as writers need to be careful not to accidentally perpetuate any harmful stereotypes or tropes. I'm not saying you would do this intentionally. If you clicked on this video, I doubt that you would do that, except for, the people writing discriminatory things in the comments right now. They probably would. But who knows? They might not even be writers. They might just have seen a trans flag and decided to try and ruin my day. Just so you know, transphobes, YouTube can't tell the difference between a positive comment and a negative one, so any comments just boost this video's reach. Anyway, back to talking to you, the wonderful people this video is actually meant for. I really doubt that you would intentionally write a harmful stereotype into your story, but you might do it accidentally just because they've been in media you watched or read or absorbed in any way, shape, or form. If you always see gay guys being represented as flamboyant, then your brain will automatically go, oh, they're gay, so they must be flamboyant. This is an unintentional bias, but still one that we need to be careful of. So when writing a trans character, or any character from a marginalized community, be careful not to accidentally lean into any harmful tropes and stereotypes. That's where that research I mentioned doing comes in. So once you're sure you're not writing them poorly, how do you write them well? It's deceptively simple. Just write them like you would any other character. Their whole story doesn't have to be about being trans. Their room doesn't have to be plastered with trans flags, though it can be. It's a very pleasing color palette. But just write them like any other person, because they are just like any other person. This is one of the things that I really appreciate about Elle in Heartstopper. If you want an example of good LGBTQIA+ representation, you should definitely check out that show, and maybe even my video on it. Now, Elle is trans, and we are told that explicitly, but her story isn't about that. Her plotlines cover everything from trying to make friends at a new school, to falling in love, to finding success as an artist. The fact that she's trans does play into it at times, such as in that latter plotline that I mentioned, but it's never the focus of her life. It's just a facet of her. And I think that when writing representation, that's the most important thing to take away. That the identities of these characters are important, but they don't make up their whole personality. In fact, they probably make up none of their personality, because your identity doesn't dictate anything about your personality. If you're a subscriber and you've watched a few of my videos, how would you describe my personality in 3 words? Okay, you've got your 3 words. Is bisexual one of them? No, I didn't think so. Because what would that even mean? How can someone have a bisexual or a transgender personality? Okay, so now we know that we need to do research and that we need to write them like any other character. What are a few things that there should be more of in trans representation? Well, first off, how about some more trans representation in general? I think the world could sure use some more of that. What about trans characters that don't quite pass? And no one makes any comments about it. How about trans characters who are part of other communities as well, like a lesbian trans woman or a bisexual trans man? Also, while doing research for this video, I noticed a lot of people saying they wish they had more representation of trans men in general. But you know what the main thing I saw people asking for was? Casual representation. Characters who just happen to be trans. Characters whose plot lines are about other things. They get love interests and happy endings. They have friends who care about them and loving families. Because while it is important to show all of the terrible things some trans people have to go through when they come out and even after, it's also important to show the happy things. The moments of euphoria they experience when they're able to finally be themselves openly. The families who don't turn them away and instead embrace them with open arms. The supportive friends and loved ones that are there to help them. Think about it kind of like being trans. Yes, there are horrible moments of dysphoria, But that's not all there is. There are beautiful moments of euphoria too. And there are moments when you're not thinking about being trans at all. There are a lot of those moments. Because it's just one part of who you are, not the whole story. I hope that this video helped you out, and if there's something that you wish there was more of in trans representation, comment it down below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because next week I'll be talking about how to write non-binary representation. And speaking of representation, if you want to rep both your queer sibs and this fine channel, I now have a shop. Check it out in the description, as there you can find my Pride Month exclusive rainbow Sup Peoples shirts. I'll be taking them down on the 1st of July, so make sure to take a peek before they're gone. You can also get my I Heart Villains merch from one of the previous videos. Hopefully you all enjoy, and I'll see you on the next page. Till then.